Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a safe place for leading with your heart. Hey, thanks for being here. You, Me, Empathy is the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective, a collaborative mental health community designed to empower each of us to grow our capacity for empathy, vulnerability, and emotional wayfinding. Just a friendly reminder that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. No one is just a silly boy with a feely heart. You can support the show by leaving a review in Apple Podcasts, following us on social media at Yumi Empathy and Feely Human, and joining the Feely Human Collective community at feelyhuman.co. And now your host, Known Wells.
Hello, Feely Humans. Welcome to another episode of Yumi Empathy. My name is Known Wells, and this is episode 135 on finding our own self-worth with Amy Beashel. Amy is an author and the writer of the new book called The Sky Is Mine. It's a fiction book. It's a beautiful exploration through the eyes of this character, Izzy, of really heavy topics like domestic violence and consent and rape culture and violence toward women and microaggressions. And yeah, that is heavy stuff, but it's done in a way that's very relatable and very beautiful, and you're just going to love and really relate to the main character, Izzy. Definitely go support Amy Beashel. Support independent writers. Go order that book from your local bookstore, and I also have links to that in the show notes for this episode at feelyhuman.co. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today, and finding our own self-worth. We talk about Amy's book. We talk about the push and pull of being in COVID-19 lockdown. We talk about space hopping. Yes, space hopping. If you don't know what that is, listen, because I sure didn't know, but it's adorable and very curious. We also talk about writing the things we need to hear. This is a great episode for aspiring writers, creative types. Amy is so lovely, and really enjoyed this conversation. Before we get to the episode, though, I wanted to remind you a very free and quick way to support the show is by leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. It just takes a couple of minutes. It's free to do, and it really does truly help out the show. We got some new ones recently because I've been asking directly if you can. We're at 95 reviews, so if we can get up to 100 reviews, maybe I'll do something special. But I'm going to read one new review here from Mama Sue's Raleigh. Mama Sue says, love this podcast and what it offers listeners. I found Yumi Empathy on Instagram first and was excited when finding the podcast as well. I appreciate conversational podcast styles and feel this one is educational and moving while being easy to listen to. Thank you, Known, for creating this community and sharing your story. Loving the guests as well. Thank you, Mama Sue's. I know you, and thank you for leaving that wonderful review. Truly, listeners, please, if you haven't left a review and you've enjoyed even just an episode, please go leave a review. It truly does help out the show. Putting this podcast out every week is a lot of work, and I do appreciate your support. And other ways you can support the show is by going to feelyhuman.co and just being part of the Feely Human Collective community by writing for the journal and by buying merch in the shop. We have t-shirts and pins and stickers and some more stuff coming soon. If you're an artist or if you're a freelance artist, there's ways to collaborate with me. So check that out at feelyhuman.co. Do some writing. Take my free 2-week online workshop, Feely Human 101, which is all about empathy, vulnerability, and emotional wayfinding. My 3 favorite things in the world. Aside from doggos and maybe peanut butter, but great stuff. Go to feelyhuman.co and remember to leave a review and a rating for Yumi Empathy in Apple Podcasts. Make sure to follow all the things at Yumi Empathy and at Feely Human on Instagram. We also have a Facebook community over on on Facebook called Feely Humans Unite. So go check that out. And I think that's all I'll say. I guess what I'll say is thank you for being a part of this community. Truly, I've had some a rough couple of months mentally, and it's been difficult. But you know what helps is you guys showing up and engaging with my Instagram, stories and videos that I share when I'm vulnerable. I see you and I love you, and I just so appreciate you showing up. It really means the world. And, I'm recording this on Sunday. This episode comes out tomorrow. And, today as you're listening to it. And this week is going to be a tough one. I have my second EMDR session. I have an EEG. And I have an MRI all on separate days. So it's going to be a big one. And then on Saturday is my birthday. I'll be 39. Hooray for me. Anyways, it's a big week. I hope you enjoy this episode. If you can do anything for my birthday, if you want, again, I feel like I'm begging at this point, but please leave a review for You Me Empathy in Apple Podcasts. It does mean the world to me. Okay, I've been blathering on forever. You're here for not that. You're here for new content, which is my conversation with the lovely, amazing writer of The Sky Is Mine, Amy Beashel, on finding our own self-worth. Enjoy. Welcome to You Me Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You Me Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight, so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. You Me Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I am thrilled to be here with writer, space hopper, of which I have no idea what that means, and we're almost certainly going to get to the bottom of it, and the debut author of the book, The Sky Is Mine. It's Amy Beashel. Hello, Amy.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. It's very exciting to be here. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. So excited to have you. Mutual contact friend Jennifer Niven put us in touch, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, it was very exciting. So Jennifer Niven very kindly read my book and put us in touch after that. So yeah, it was a thrill that she even read my book, but then to get to meet people like you as well is an even bigger bonus. So thank you.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. Yeah, Jennifer is amazing. I've known her for years. We've met in person a few times, and she's just like the most generous and supportive and big-hearted person I know.
Yeah, she was amazing. And I emailed her quite randomly just to see if she would read an advance copy of the book. And then when she did, and then came back with such amazing supportive comments, I couldn't breathe basically for a few minutes, and there was nobody else in the house to share my excitement because my kids were in bed and my husband was out. So I was just kind of leaping around the kitchen on my own. But yeah, she's been incredibly supportive. I feel very lucky.
That's amazing. Well, Amy, I'm so happy to have you here. You should know, we always start the show with an emotional check-in. So how has your week been? How are you feeling today?
My week has been mixed. We're in lockdown still in the UK, so we're in a funny space at the moment. So there's a bit of a roller coaster of emotions. I'm at home with my husband and my two children, which is lovely in some ways because we've got all this extra time together, but challenging in others. I'm very used to having time on my own to write and think about writing and other things. And with an 8 and 9-year-old in the house, that's not so easy. And for them, it's really hard as well. So they're going through their own emotions too. So yeah, we're kind of working on supporting them and each other, and trying not to go too crazy with it all. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag at the moment.
I think so many of us can relate to that right now, the mixed bag of things, which is grateful, gratitude, being with the people we love, but also navigating these new boundaries and what is the sort of push and pull of the relationship look like, because that changes. It's all new, right? This thing, it's very new.
And I think it's hard as well I'm very lucky to live where I do. I live in Shropshire in the UK, and just in a town called Shrewsbury, and we live right on a river. It's not overly populated. We can go out for walks, and we have a lovely home and a garden that we can play in. And so I'm in very fortunate circumstances, but still find it frustrating. And then you kind of get these moments of guilt for feeling that frustration, because you think, God, I'm really one of the lucky ones here. I don't have any right to be feeling angry or frustrated. And so yeah, it's kind of controlling those things, and I suppose giving yourself permission to feel a bit angry and frustrated sometimes without feeling guilty about that.
100%. I think that's a perfect point, and something I think we all struggle with is, we can do both, right? We can feel our pain and we can feel our struggle because it's uniquely ours and that's our real valid emotional experience, but we can also feel sad and want to help and see how we can help others who are maybe less fortunate than us. We can hold both of those truths equally, one doesn't cancel out the other. And I think that's an important thing that I struggle with sometimes too,
Yeah, it was funny when lockdown was first announced over here. I kind of went into this crazy, what can I do to help people mode, and came up with all of these things that I would do in the community, and almost went into overdrive about it. And I've tried to just sit back a little bit and recognize that I've got, as well as trying to do things for other people, I've got my 2 kids to look after and myself as well. So it's that balance too, isn't it, of kind of looking out for others beyond your immediate family, and then also taking the time to make sure everyone in the house is okay as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I keep thinking about this time, this coronavirus pandemic time, as really global exercise in how really nuanced and tricky and damn hard empathy can be. Because it's, you think about how people respond and react, and there's fear and there's anxiety and there are maybe certain segments of the population doing things that I would probably say is idiotic, but for the most part, people are trying to figure this out in the best way they know how, right? And with that, that's the true test of empathy, right? Can we give it to people who may be doing things that we think, is not good or bad, but it's just that's problematic. Let's see how we can sort of shift this, Yeah,
it's difficult. Yeah, when people are behaving in ways that you might not, but you don't know the reasons why they're behaving in that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I suppose it's about having that level of understanding that while we may all behave differently, there will be reasons that we don't know that we have to try and imagine, maybe.
Yeah. So what is in the UK, what is the sort of current state of things in terms of the pandemic?
So we are at the moment still only key workers are allowed out to work. There's no school for the children, homeschool. So the schools are doing an amazing job of providing home education, mostly online. There's no social gatherings. All the shops are closed apart from the essential ones. So, yeah, it's pretty strange circumstances. No bars, no restaurants, no concerts. So everybody's in their homes pretty much all of the time. You're allowed in your garden. You're allowed out once a day for exercise, but you can't so you could go to the park for a walk or a run, but you can't sit. All the benches have signs on them saying you're not allowed to sit down there.
Oh,
They
wow.
have picnics. It's very much you're in your house apart from once a day when you're allowed out for exercise or essentials.
Yeah, that's similar to here, except I haven't seen any benches with signs. Has there been any collective like pushback against some of that, or has it been all pretty, people acquiescing to the situation?
The British public, I think, generally are quite sedate. There'll be a pushback verbally on Twitter and other forms of social media, but generally we're not ones for rioting, or we do what we're told. I mean, there are people rebelling and they are having parties and things, and the police have been called out to different places. But yeah, generally people are acquiescing and they're doing as they're told. But you can tell that people are getting fed up with it, and there's been a gradual increase in traffic on the roads and people going out. And so I think the government are kind of taking that on board and starting to look not just at the medical the deaths that will arise of COVID, but also the mental health implications of an extended lockdown as well.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And I think that it's similar to what's happening here.
Yeah.
So, Amy, first, very important question I need to ask you is, what the heck is a space hopper?
I think in the US, do you call it a hippity hop?
I hope we call it a hippity hop. That is adorable.
It's a big round inflatable ball that normally has a face drawn on the front of it, and it's got two handles that come out the top of its head that look a bit like ears, and you bounce around on it. So you sit on it and you bounce around.
Yes, I've seen these. I don't really know what they're called because I don't really have any context for them, because I don't know if I've ever even used one before. But I saw you bouncing around on Instagram.
Yeah, so the first book that I wrote, my main character had always wanted to break a world record. And so in the name of research, I thought I should do the same. And I was looking at records that not Izzy, she's the protagonist in the current book, Clem was her name. And I was looking for world records that Clem could try to break. And I came across this guy, an American guy called Ashrita Furman. Have you heard of him?
I have not.
Well, he is amazing. So he holds the world record for holding the highest number of world records. So he has hundreds and hundreds of world records that he has broken. And he has a friend, Bipin, who helps him break all these crazy records, like slicing melons with knives. He pogo sticked the Great Wall of China, I think.
Oh my goodness.
And he had the world record for space hopping over a mile. And for some reason, when I was reading through all of his records, I thought, yeah, space hopping, I could probably do that. And so I asked my husband to get me a space hopper for Christmas. And he looked at me a bit quizzically, but did buy me a space hopper for Christmas. And then we were living on the seaside at the time. And so I used to get up in the mornings and space hop along the seafront, trying to avoid passers-by by going out early. But yeah, I did get spotted a few times, and I did actually fracture my coccyx in training as well.
Oh my God.
Which was really painful. Yeah, it was horrendous.
So you were out there just like along, obviously early morning, but runners and stuff you'd just be bouncing on this hippity hoppity space hopper, and people would be seeing you do this thing.
Yeah, looking at me a little bit strangely. Yeah. But the time that I broke my coccyx, I went out in the middle of the day. So there was even more people around, and there were some builders working on a hotel on the seafront, and they clocked me falling to the hard ground below and then trying to style it out very unsuccessfully as I got up and limped my way back home.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it was all a bit sad, and it took about a year for it to recover before I could get back on the space hopper. But it was funny because when I got to the doctors, and they can't really do anything about a fractured coccyx, but one of my first questions was, when can I get back on a space hopper? And he just looked at me as if I was completely mad. But I got back on it in about, I think it was the following year, and managed to get the record. But I didn't beat Ashrita Furman. I was way off his, but they gave me the world record for the fastest woman. So
well, there you go.
Yeah. So that was my
I love that the doctor was looked at you that way. I love that you said that, because that, traditionally someone who says, when can I get back to the thing, is like a world-class athlete or something.
You saying I'm not a world-class athlete?
I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying, and I'm just very curious and delighted by all of this. I think that's where it's coming from. Is I want a space hopper now. Like, I want to bounce around my neighborhood on a space hopper because it looks fun. It looks delightful. I need one pronto, is what I'm saying.
I'll see if I can sort you out with the space hopper. They are very good fun, but they're very hard on your thighs.
Well, I'm a runner. I think I can take it.
Yeah, you can do it. I hadn't been on last weekend. I got back on it because we were raising money for Refuge. It's a domestic violence charity in the UK. And I hadn't been on my space hopper since I got the world record. But I have been running, and I was okay. I was able to, I think I did 2.6 kilometers on the hopper last Sunday. So yeah, if you run, you can definitely hop.
Okay. One last question on the space hopper, and then we'll move on. How do you track the length which you're on it? Like, are you actually going to like a track, or you have a pedometer of some kind?
So on Sunday, because it wasn't official, we just used a Garmin watch. We just took a rough estimate. But
Gotcha.
For the world record, I had to go to a track. I had to have officials there who I had to have photographs, video evidence, and athletics officials to confirm that I'd done the distance that I said I had. So it was quite a feat to get everybody together for a space hop. Yeah.
Well,
we did it.
I think that is so delightful and charming that you're this space hopper extraordinaire. So, Amy, shifting, quite dramatically, can you? So this show, Amy Empathy, is about empathy, certainly, but it's also about mental health. Can you give me a couple of seminal moments from your life, whether it's from your childhood or young adulthood, that sort of stick out in your memory? They don't need to be mental health related necessarily, but just kind of stick out in your memory as being sort of crucial parts of your journey as a human, and kind of speak to the person you are today. Just a couple of moments, memories that kind of stick out in your brain as being pivotal in your identity and where you are now.
I would say most recently, the time when I've become aware of my mental health, which is silly because you're always aware of your physical health, but your mental health can kind of tick along without you giving it much consideration.
Right.
But I think in recent years we moved from Kent, which is in the southeast of England, up to Shropshire, which is in the middle of England, and I don't think I'd realised how much of a big deal that was for me to make that move. So my husband wanted to move back up here. His family live up this way. And I'd grown up in the south, so all my friends were in the south. And it was only when I started writing the new book that I'm working on, which is a lot about grief, that I suddenly realised that I was grieving. And I'd never really thought of being able to grieve for a place. I always thought you just would grieve for a person. And then it was only in writing the book and actually going to see a counsellor and talking to her about it that I thought, oh my goodness, this book isn't actually about what I think it's about. It's about me and my grief for having left this place and everything it represented, and really acknowledging that loss, I suppose. And so that was the biggest thing for me most recently, I think.
Yeah. You're right. Like, I think that's such an important distinction. Grief comes in so many forms, and you're right. We often think of it in terms of the loss of someone, right? Grieving the loss of someone. But grief can be like, I think for me, like as a maybe anecdote, like grief could look like me leaving the church, right? And grieving that loss, right? Like having that as a sort of identifying thing as part of my person growing up, and, me being in my late 30s now, like not having that. And that was a grieving process, right? Like, and so grief can look so many different ways. How did it manifest? Like, how did it start sort of, bubbling up in your noggin, and what sort of were you, what sort of, I guess, it brought you to say, oh, I gotta talk to a counselor about this?
I think I was really angry, but angry about things that seemed completely unconnected. So I was very angry about laundry, and which sounds, I mean, I still get angry about laundry because it is the most boring thing in the whole world.
It is.
But I was exceptionally angry about laundry, and I think I was just retreating a little bit, and I was listening to I was obsessed with this grief podcast, and a UK podcast called oh my goodness, can't think what it's called. But I was listening to it all the time, and I couldn't work out why I was so obsessed with grief. And then they would talk about the different stages of grief, and I was recognizing my own recent behavior in those stages, but I couldn't work out. Nobody had died, and so I couldn't work out what it was I was grieving. And yeah, then gradually the pieces started to come together, and I realized then that this whole part of my life, which had been so significant, and I don't think it was just the place. I think I knew that I would miss the sea and my friends from that place, but because all of my friends from my whole past were in the south, I kind of felt like I'd lost them too, even though I hadn't lost them, because I can still meet them, but it takes a lot more effort. And so I suppose the ease of those friendships had gone. And everything just felt logistically harder. And but I think it was mostly anger that came about. And I'm not generally an angry person, but I did start to I felt like there was this latent anger there all the time, that it wouldn't take much for it to suddenly bubble up and be something much more significant. But I couldn't pinpoint at the time what it was.
Yeah. It's fun. It's not funny. It's curious. I think anger is an emotion we often go to as humans. It's like the first sort of like first response in sort of when we're dealing with like bigger emotions than we've experienced before, or feelings that we haven't the familiarity with. We go to anger. Like I've been there for myself. Like when I first started sort of figuring out like what was going on with my depression, like it was anger, right? Like I was just dealing with a great deal of anger, and I was like, what is going on here? And I realized, oh, I've got clinical depression. But like anger seems maybe an easy one or something, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, well, you think about my daughter at the moment is really quite angry, and I think that's all part of lockdown. I mean, so much has been taken away from us. I mean, I suppose it's a bit like a grief for us at the moment, isn't it, that we're experiencing, because all these freedoms that we would normally have been taken away. And so while we haven't had anybody that we know, thankfully, be affected by the disease, we're still affected by it day to day. And yeah, she's really angry about it and can't understand why she's so angry. And she feels really guilty for being angry and keeps saying she's an angry person. And actually, she's not an angry person. She's just feeling angry at the moment. But it's so hard for an 8-year-old to not define herself by that, when that's the biggest thing she feels at the moment, I suppose.
Yeah, that is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think just change in general is a grieving process. Like change is hard, and we're all sort of experiencing this global change and trying to figure out what's going on. And that's a grief. That's a loss. We're losing our normalcy, right? We're losing what these sort of structures and routines that identify us and make us feel comfort, right? And all of a sudden we're out of those comfort zones, and I think we're grieving that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting when we get them back, how we'll react to that as well.
Yeah, I have been thinking about that too. I do hope like this whole pandemic experience, there's at least a response of, or that's not the right way to put it, but people think about empathy more, and people think about how we are connected, and how, like we go outside and we have to think about like, oh, how will my place in this park, how will that interact with other people, and will I get someone sick? And like, just, thinking on those terms just broadly, I think is helpful, right? Because it helps us see the humanity in everyone else, and see how connected we are, and see how we can, good or bad, impact each other,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even the outpouring of community here has been really moving, and I hope that that continues. I mean, we haven't really spoken very much with our neighbours here before, and now we're speaking to them, we're checking in on them, seeing if they need anything, and most people seem to be doing that, and so I wonder whether there'll be a bigger sense of neighbourhood community that we've lacked in recent years. I had when I was a kid. I grew up in a really close neighbourhood where we had three families who were all really close. We shared Christmas and birthdays, and every single celebration we would spend it together. And we don't have anything like that here. But maybe with this and just having that, well, it's not personal connection at the moment because we can't actually see each other. But maybe when we can see each other again, there'll be more of a yearning for that. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I hope so. I hope it I hope we see, I mean, we are like connecting in different ways now, right? Like I downloaded the Marco Polo app, which is, like a way to text people, but it's like a FaceTime sort of situation. But like I hope that there is this sort of leveling up of this need for like true, authentic, showing up as ourselves connection with the people around us, because I do think we get caught up in technology, we get caught up in our own egos and bullshit, right? And I find more and more that we grow in connection with others. We find hope and perspective, and we learn so much more in connection with others, not out of it.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think the talking to people as well has become so much more important. So although we're using technology to do it, I think I've found myself wanting to withdraw a bit from WhatsApp groups, which are great, but there's only so many memes about COVID that you want to read, that you want to look at.
Right.
And going back to the telephone, which weirdly for the last, 10 years, I've been a bit scared of the telephone. I've put off calling people, and I don't know whether it's because I'm worried about interrupting them and they might not want to talk, and I don't want them to feel obliged to talk. But if they don't want to, they don't have to pick up. But now I'm more instinctively, I'm wanting to call people and speak with them rather than just doing it through message, which has been nice. It's given me an opportunity to catch up with people who I hadn't spoken to on the phone for ages.
Yeah, that's lovely. I love that. Yeah, I've felt the same way about the phone, and it's plain and simple. It's a way to connect, and I think that we lean on maybe texting or these other forms of communication, but yeah, it's interesting.
How have you found? Have you been doing Zoom calls and things like that?
Yeah, I've been doing a bit of that with like every Sunday actually since this started. So the past whatever 2 months it's been, every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific time, I've been doing just virtual check-ins with my community. And, a handful of people show up, and we just kind of like check in and see how everyone's doing. And so we've been doing that. And then my day job, Amy, I've been working from home, and I feel very lucky in this. I've been working from home for years. And so, I'm very used to Zoom calls and connecting that way. So, but yeah, like doing a bit more of that, and the Zoom calls are kind of a fun way to connect.
Yeah, we've quite enjoyed it. We've been having a Sunday Zoom call with my family, and instead of it just being me speaking to my mum on the phone, we've got my brother there and my niece and nephew, and my kids come on, and my daughter's been doing online baking with my mum and her cousin and
Amazing.
My nephew's girlfriend. Yeah, so that's been really lovely because they never would have done that before, and we didn't really know my nephew's girlfriend too well, and so doing these weekly baking sessions, we've got to know her better in a way that we wouldn't have done without this. And that's not to say I'm glad this has happened or that putting a silver lining on everything, but right. I think it's nice that there are some positives in it.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned at the top, or maybe before we got started recording, I haven't finished your new book, but I intend to, because it's wonderful so far. I'm enjoying it very much. It's called The Sky Is Mine, and I've read a lot of books in the quote unquote YA genre, or the young adult sort of targeted audience books, including our pal Jennifer Niven's books, of course, and I there's something about, like, I grew up reading, I was very much drawn to Jack London books, right? Or books with, people of my gender, boys sort of out in the woods, sort of exploring with dogs and just, being out on their own. And I always was sort of drawn to those types of stories. For you, Amy, what were the stories that you were drawn to as a kid, or the books that you were drawn to, or the characters that you were drawn to?
Well, my mum and I have this standing joke that every book that I really enjoyed and that I might have written about for college or school, they were always about women finding their own self-worth. And so when I was describing The Sky Is Mine to my mum, when I first started writing it, she was like, I know where this is going. I mean, it's going to be about a woman finding her own self-worth. And I was like, you've got it. That's exactly what it is. So they're the kinds of books that I've always loved. In terms of authors, Judy Blume was like the queen of young adult literature. Yeah. So I used to read her, and but I read a whole load of mix of stuff. So I think over one summer, I read Judy Blume, some Sweet Valley High, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, by Thomas Hardy, and Flowers in the Attic by Virginia Andrews. And so across different genres, high lit, low lit. So I'm kind of not set on one type of writing I try to read quite broadly. Yeah. And I've really got into memoir recently as well. I only ever used to read fiction, but now I read quite a bit of nonfiction as well. And some YA writers, obviously Jennifer Niven, I love, and Jandy Nelson, I'll Give You the Sun, is amazing. So if you're looking for other YA, I'd recommend that too.
What do you think the sort of why do you think you're drawn to characters that, or female characters specifically, that are looking or that are finding their own self-worth? Like, what is that about, do you think?
Oh, do you know what? It's really interesting because I had a physical reaction when you asked me that question. My eyes have welled up and I've got goosebumps. And I don't think anybody's asked me that. And I wonder whether it's because, oh my goodness, and I might get a bit emotional, that when I was a teenager, I was in a relationship with one person from the age of 13 to the age of 27. And I think in that period, I probably lost a lot of my self-worth. And I wonder whether I'm writing books that would have helped me in that time. And I hadn't really thought about it like that before, but I do. Yeah, I think when you were asking me earlier about moments in my life where kind of pivotal mental health moments. Yeah. I remember when I got out of that relationship and I moved into a rented flat in London and I went for a run, and it was nighttime. I went out about 10 o'clock at night and I ran across the Millennium Bridge, which is it's known as the Wobbly Bridge in London. And as I ran across it and I stood in the middle, I got absolute goosebumps. And it sounds ridiculous, but I felt like I owned the city. I felt like, I don't think it was me owning the city. I think it was me owning myself for the first time in a long time. And so, I think maybe that's why I want to be able to give that feeling in a book to somebody else, or give them the hope of having that feeling, maybe.
That is beautiful. And I have goosebumps now too, Amy. I do. That's really beautiful. I love that so much. And I was wondering about that because it is, do you find it often that, like, I know, so I'm not a published author, but I consider myself a writer and I write a lot. And a lot of the things I write are things that I need to hear, right? Like, it's like because deep down, we're always so hard on ourselves, right? And, we know intellectually that we're our best advocates and we have to be, but a lot of times we just struggle in being that for ourselves. And so, like, I find a lot of like mirroring in sort of my community, and they give back to me such great gifts and reminding myself of like, oh, you're doing good work. No, and like, because the last person who will tell me that is me, right? So when I write, it's kind of like a mirror back in saying, okay, this is the type of person you are or can be, or this is the hope that you can strive for, those types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's only really in writing the book that I'm writing now that I've realized how much I'm doing what you're saying is writing myself, but not myself. I mean, they're not autobiographical books in any way, but there are certainly elements of the story that resonate with something that I need to understand at that time. And so, like I was saying about the grief and her grief, my protagonist's grief in this book is very different from my grief, but it was definitely a way into me exploring my own and having a better understanding of that and acknowledging it as well.
Right.
And
so the character of Izzy in the book, The Sky's Mine, this book explores, from the get-go, you're sort of thrown right into it. Domestic violence and rape culture and violence towards women and these pretty brutal aspects of our humanity, right?
Yeah.
Are you saying have you had any experience with that, like yourself, or is it just a framework for showcasing like how people find themselves and their self-worth through traumas, through hard experiences?
No, I think most women and girls that I know have had some kind of experience of it, albeit not to the same extent as Izzy. And when people have asked me what research I did for the book, I said, well, I've talked to my friends. It's been my predominant research.
Right.
Because I finished it just as the Harvey Weinstein scandal broke. And so there was more conversation around these kinds of things then. So my friends and I were discussing it. And it was just shocking to listen to their stories and things that I'd experienced myself that I kind of just put down to that being the way things were. And some quite small incidents, but I don't want to say that small makes them sound insignificant, but they didn't necessarily upset me at the time, but in accumulation, all these microaggressions become something much bigger. And I think it is that accumulation of all the micro experiences that allow the bigger ones to happen without much comment sometimes, if that makes sense.
Oh, it absolutely makes sense. Yeah.
So in terms of, I had things like in workplaces, I had bosses touching my bum. I worked in a clothes shop where a guy, the manager, used to put a measuring tape down the back of my shirt because it made my nipples go erect, like the measuring tape tickling against my back. And he and the other people that worked there used to stand around and watch that and laugh. And I laughed at the time because what else do you do? And it was only a few years later that I was like, yeah, actually, I was really uncomfortable with that. And it was wrong, but at the time I didn't feel like I was able to say anything. And there have been other things that have happened. And I think when I finished the book and I was talking, I'd got the deal for it, and we were at a party, and I was saying what the book is about, and I said, oh, it's about domestic abuse and consent, but because I'm aware that sounds very heavy, I said, but it does have a happy ending. And a guy turned around to me and said, oh, what's the happy ending? The man gets what he wants in the end, does he? And I was like, well, no, funnily enough, because I don't see that as a happy ending. Right. And it shocked me that even in the wake of Harvey Weinstein, somebody could make a joke publicly like that about rape.
Right.
And so I think I kind of wanted to address the fact that it can be a laughing matter for some people, for a lot of people, I think. And it's not a laughing matter at all. And so there was that. And then in terms of the domestic abuse, I used to volunteer for a domestic violence helpline called Refuge in the UK. And I'd always been interested in that. My mum was a solicitor who used to work with families who'd experienced, some of the families she worked with had experienced domestic violence. And so it had always been on my radar, even though I wasn't subject to it. It was something I was very much aware of. So when I moved to London, I volunteered for this charity. And the stories that I heard on this phone line were just so tragic. But they weren't stories, they were women's lives.
Right.
And women from all different types of societies. And so, yeah, I'd always wanted to write about it. And it was just interesting to me to write it from the perspective of a teenager. And as I was saying earlier, to try and empower teenagers who might be in that position to do something about it.
Right. I'm so grateful you are writing this story and you have written this story, because, just hearing you tell those stories, and your experiences with, I would argue, and look, I am a man, and so that is how I'm sort of contextualizing this comment. The microaggressions to me seem like even more insidious, right? Because they are, like you said, they sort of build into these macroaggressions, but they're also the aggressions that go, that breed in silence, right? They fester and we don't know what to do with them, right? We don't know how to respond to them. We feel like, oh, this is like just what happens, right? This is the norm. And like, it's so deeply upsetting. Like, how do we as a culture, aside from writing beautiful books that sort of, attempt to and will empower young women, right? Like, how do we break this cycle of violence and abuse toward women? Like, it's because I'm this topic, Amy, is very personal to me. My dad was a very violent person, and he was exceptionally ego driven and exceptionally emotionally manipulative when he didn't get his way. And there was a lot of that just baked in toxic masculinity and baked in misogyny. And I was witness to a lot of it, and it just rots my stomach to think about. And you keep hearing about these stories, right? And I so happy for the courageousness of the women who came out against Harvey Weinstein, fuck that guy. But like, what else can we do?
Oh God, it's such a big question. And I'm sorry you went through that experience. I'm really sorry. I think it has to be talking about it, which sounds so, it doesn't sound active enough, but I think it's through conversation, and through conversation between men and women and boys and girls, and it not being an us against them, because we're all victims of it in some way, whether or not you're male or female. So I think it's about a conversation that's inclusive, and not necessarily apportioning blame either, because I don't know that that's necessary. I mean, obviously in the Harvey Weinstein case, in those cases, there is absolute blame.
Right.
But culturally, I suppose we all need to take some responsibility for things. And yeah, I hope that things like my book, and there's a brilliant, I don't know if you've seen on Netflix, the brilliant sex education series. Have you watched that?
Oh yeah, it's excellent. Yeah, I love it.
Oh God, amazing. And I think what's brilliant about that show is it puts everything out in the open, and will hopefully instigate conversation between kids, and also perhaps kids and their parents as well, if their parents have watched it as well. It just takes the edge off those subjects and normalizes them. And hopefully, we can just start talking about things a bit more. I wish I had a better answer, but
it's a perfect answer. I love that answer. It's important, talking about it, being vulnerable, being open, normalizing sex, right? Like, sex is a thing that we need to normalize and talk about. And there's so many, institutions that, that just breed this so much guilt and shame around some of these topics, like sex, right? Yeah. I was struck by what you said about, we all sort of being victims by this, this rape culture, this violence towards women. And you're absolutely right. So I just finished this book by Glennon Doyle called Untamed, and it's very, very good. And it's targeted toward, people who identify as women, mainly, but I think everyone should read it. But there was a moment in the book where she was talking about how, the whole book's about like how women need to be untamed, right? And free from these cultural norms, these ideas that really hold them back, right? They have to be this way. They have to be a good wife. They have to, all this bullshit, right?
Mm.
And the same is true of men, right? Like we have to be, we have to be strong. We have to be leaders. We have to be all these things. The sooner we disassociate from these, ideals of what, a certain gender should be, a certain person should be, the better off we are. The more easier it will be to listen, right? To have these conversations, to open up, right? To not take part in the act of, one gender sort of like being one thing and one gender being another thing, right? Subservient or whatever it may be. Like we need to let go of that artifice.
Yeah, you're right. And it's funny because I thought we were getting so much closer to that. And then I went to shadow another author called Non Pratt, and she was doing a presentation on gender identity. And it was really interesting because she was doing a PowerPoint, and there was, it started off with advertising geared at kids or the parents of kids, and just how stereotyped that is, and even the language that was being used in toys for boys versus toys for girls, and all the boys stuff was the words that were being used were wild, active, strong, and the toys themselves were promoting physical activity and being outside, whereas a lot of the girl stuff was very sedentary and perhaps very aesthetic led and nurturing. And I kind of thought we all knew all this, but although we know it, nothing's really changing. And we're being fed this message from such an early age. And she was giving an example as well of greetings cards that you would get. So she had a whole display of these greetings cards that you would get for parents who just had a baby. And those obvious differences in the cards for boys and girls. And that stereotypical blue for boy, girl for a boy, pink for a girl,
right?
And how much softer the pictures for the girl cards were than the boys. I don't know. It is there from the off, and so I suppose it's about changing it from that first moment, isn't it? When a baby comes in, we're already cultivating what society thinks that they should be. So yeah, it's difficult.
It is difficult, and those are great examples of the insidiousness of it. It's so deep into capitalism, really. It's money, right? Like there's so much sort of riding on, and maybe not, like maybe they can shift into like, but like it's such, people eat it up, right? Like it's we all, like as a culture, just as a whole, buy into it.
Yeah.
Like we buy the things, we buy the pink, we buy the blue, we buy the greeting cards, right? Like how, I mean, I don't specifically, you don't specifically, right? But like,
I probably have. I confess.
Yeah, sure. We probably have. Yeah, you're probably right. So like, talking, right? Like, there's got to be like some other ways we can sort of protest against this nonsense. And I know that there are amazing, obviously you writing this book, there are other amazing authors out there doing amazing work in this area in, gender and rape culture and all this stuff. But it's so deep in our culture. And it almost seems like part of me seems like it feels futile at times. Like, how do we fight against this? This is like a $1 billion, $1 trillion capitalist force. It seems overwhelming. Yeah.
And that's why I can't, the only thing that I feel I can do that is proactive is write and talk as well and speak up, because for so long I haven't spoken up. And I don't know if you've read the scene in the book yet where there's by the river where the boys are rapping. Have you?
Not yet.
Yeah. Okay, so this is based on a real life event when we were first thinking of we were moving up to Shrewsbury, where we live now, and we'd come up here for a couple of weeks in the summer, and the kids were at summer camp, and my husband and I were sat by the river, and on the opposite bank was a group of boys and girls, and they were mid-teens, and they were having what I deemed was this idyllic afternoon. And I kept saying to my husband, "Oh God, don't you miss those years? I loved those years of being a teenager. You just kiss for hours, and that lack of inhibition. It's amazing." And they were throwing each other in the river, and it just seemed so free and lovely. And then suddenly the boys started rapping, and I was like, "Oh, they're serenading the girls. It's lovely." And then when I listened more closely, they were rapping about raping somebody's little sister.
Oh, my
and
God.
I thought I'd misheard. And then they repeated the chorus, and I Googled the lyrics, and there was a video on YouTube of this kid who must have only been about 12, 13. And it was his song. And on YouTube, the only comments that were there were quite a few comments, and the majority of the comments weren't criticizing the lyrics. They were just saying that the boy couldn't rap, and that was their only problem with this video. And I was so shocked that I didn't say anything. And because what can you say when there's this group of guys and they're just out in the sunshine enjoying their day? And nobody said anything to them. There was all these adults around, and they must have heard the lyrics as well. But none of us were able to say anything. And in the book, Izzy does say something, and she's mocked for it. But good on her. She stands up and says something. And I would like to think that if I was in that situation again, that even if I was scared of being mocked for it, that I would stand up to them and just say, "Hold on a minute. Is this appropriate?" But I don't know, there's still something, even just saying it to you now, I feel a bit prudish saying that, but it's not prudish. It's not me being funny about sex. It's me being pissed off about people thinking it's okay to rap about rape, which is very different. But yeah, I think it's that I don't know if it's that stereotype of not wanting to be the angry woman, because anger isn't a comfortable emotion sometimes to deal with, and it's certainly not a very feminine it's not deemed to be a feminine emotion or very womanly or whatever, however you want to term it. And in the book, one of the guys says to her, "Oh, if you got your period, or are you on the blob," or something like that, because so often when a woman is angry, it's brought back to that, this kind of temporary insanity that's brought on by menstruation. So sorry, I'm rambling now, but I'd hope that as well as writing, I would stand up more when I think that there's an injustice, because I don't think I have done that enough in the past.
Yeah, and I think it takes courage for you to even say that, right, and admit that, because it's something that we all, I think, experience, is like we witness something that feels not right. We witness something that feels like a perversion to the human experience, and we get scared. Like, I know I've been in that situation, and we don't know what to say, or we feel like, how will they react? But if we can, and I'm talking to myself too, react. If we can just say, "Look, like that, you're talking about this thing, and that's not right, and that makes me feel this way." And however they're going to react, they're going to react. But I think that's ultimately what we can control, right? Is standing up in those moments, right? Writing, right? Talking about this stuff, and hopefully changing one person at a time.
Yeah. I mean, there are people in the UK who've done some phenomenal things. There's a woman, I can't remember her name now, it's gone, but she was at a concert and somebody upskirted her. Do you have that phrase in the US? So somebody had taken a photograph up her skirt.
God.
And she had the law check. She lobbied. I don't think she was even in the law. She did something else for a living. But after this happened, she grabbed the phone off the guy, and she made in the year that followed, she got upskirting made illegal in the UK, because she was so enraged by what happened that day.
Wow.
And, full kudos to her for having the balls and the tenacity and resilience to keep that going and actually change laws, because not many people would. A lot of people, quite understandably, would just retreat and be shocked and saddened by what had happened to them, but she felt the rage, and maybe that's what we need. We need more rage.
Maybe, yeah, good for her. That takes a great deal of strength to do something like that. Yeah. So, I'm thinking about like how, like when you writing this book, Amy, and you're thinking about empowering young people, right? Young women, without like giving the book away, but like what would you tell someone, who is younger, or anyone, like how they could, and maybe it's what we're talking about, maybe I'm just running in circles here, but like if you're speaking to a young person, Amy, and you're saying like, here are some things that you can do that will, empower you, that will sort of protect you maybe against some of these things. And I maybe don't mean necessarily the talking and the standing up necessarily, but like more of the self-knowing stuff, the self-worth stuff, like that sort of journey. Like what sort of tips and advice would you give that young person?
Oh, that's a big question. I think a lot of it is talking to your friends. And I think it's hard sometimes, although we would like to think that young adults could talk to us as older people. A lot of the time that's not going to be feasible for them. And so talking amongst their friends, which is a way, I hope what the book might do is start a conversation between friends if somebody's going through something, even if it's only slightly similar, that in reading a book, which is a safer space for them to explore their own feelings, that they might then be able to talk about it. So talking to friends, I also think we have the Samaritans helpline over here, which is really great for just being able to kind of splurge however it is you're feeling without fear of any kind of judgment. And it's a way to explore your own feelings in a very different way, because you're talking to a stranger and it's not a regular conversation. Because they're not giving any information about themselves. It's just the caller and who has the opportunity to just talk. And so I think that's a really positive thing as well, because I think sometimes you just need to say something out loud, and that brings about a bit of clarity that you can't have when you're keeping it inside your head, because it's almost like in your head it just whirls round and round and round and round. And I find I'm really lucky because I've got writing, and sometimes just writing something. My mum always said to me, write it down. If you've got a problem, write it down. Write the pros and cons of a situation, and somehow in writing those lists, or writing the problem out, or talking the problem out, sometimes solutions come to the fore. Not always, but yeah. So I guess it would just come back to that. I do just keep talking, but yeah, I do think mostly it just comes back to that, and knowing that you're not alone. Like, we all think that what we're going through is so unique, but actually there will always have been somebody else out there who is either going through that now or who's been through it before, and there will be someone out there who can help you. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, getting it out is so important, but it's so hard. Like I feel for young people, and I was one as you were, right? We're still young. What am I saying? But like I thinking about like my life as, a teenager, right? I knew nothing about myself, right? Like I did not know myself, and it felt very weird and unsafe at times, and it just felt scary. And I'm so grateful that there are organizations that, allow kids, teenagers to talk about their feelings, because like it's hard to even know how to do that. It's hard to even know, like even recognize that you need to get it out,
And did you know when you were a kid, did you know that you didn't know yourself, or did you think that you did, but then with hindsight you recognize that you didn't?
Yes, that is absolutely. I did not know myself, but I didn't know it necessarily at the time. I just was feeling depression and anxiety and these things, and I just felt like this was my life, right? Like that was me, but I didn't call them depression or anxiety, right? They were just part of my personality, I guess. Yeah. But I didn't know how to talk about them, right?
No, I was similar. I mean, I was adamant that I knew myself and that I knew what I was doing. And now it's only with hindsight I can see that actually the reasons I made the decisions I did were because I didn't know, and I was clinging on to what I thought were safety nets, but were actually quite destructive.
Yeah.
But at the time, they were the things that I thought were grounding me.
Yeah, it's hindsight is very important. It's been a huge part of my healing journey for sure. And I'm realizing more and more every day, Amy, that the pursuit of knowing ourselves is really the core of all of this, the core of healing, the core of connection, the core of mental health, because if we can't know ourselves, if we don't know what fills us up, if we don't know what our boundaries are, if we don't know what we like, what we don't like, all these things, like we're just going to get into situations, experiences, relationships, etc. that don't serve us, that hurt us, and we don't know it because we don't know what we need.
Yeah, and those needs change. What I think I'm realizing is those needs change all the time as well. So what was good for us at one point might not be any good for us anymore. And
Absolutely.
It's recognizing that, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
It's ongoing. We're never going to know, are we?
We aren't. It is a lifelong journey for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So The Sky Is Mine is published now. It's out in the UK. And when is the pub date for the US?
So it's the 14th of July. So it was supposed to be coming out on the 12th of May, I think, but it's been, because of Corona, it's been postponed, but it's now coming out the 14th of July. I don't know if the Audible version, the audio, is still going to be out in the US on the 12th of May. I'll have to check that. But yeah, the actual book will be available the 14th of July.
Amazing. And you mentioned another book before. Is this your second book?
Yeah, so this is the second book that I finished, the first one that I got a deal for. So I wrote another book called We Are All Made of Rubber, which was the one that had the space hopping in it. And that got me an agent, but didn't get me a deal. And which was heartbreaking in itself, but The Sky Is Mine is a much better book than We Are All Made of Rubber, I think. And yeah, now I'm writing my third YA, but the second one of the deal. And I've also written an adult one that's out on submission with publishers at the moment. And then a long time ago, there was another book which I started, but I got 100,000 words in and still never finished it. So yeah, that was a lesson for me in how not to write a novel. I didn't plot, and I just thought that the characters would come to me and it would be this very romantic experience and they would speak to me, but that didn't happen. So yeah, I just kept writing and writing and never got to an end. So I've learned my craft now, hopefully.
Isn't that funny? I relate to that so much. I think that we want, as romantics, right? I have a literature degree. I think I want to aspire to be Ernest Hemingway, right? These guys or gals that just we have this perception that they're out there and maybe they were in some respects, but like out there just drinking wine and running with the bulls and just writing and I'm going to be like Henry Miller, right? I'm just going to like live in filth and write and just grok the fullness of life. But like, we can hold on to some of that, but like there has to be like some semblance of structure and discipline. And it's not as romantic, I think, as we want it to be.
Oh, absolutely not. Oh, God, I wouldn't shed the tears I did over writing if it was as romantic as I imagined it would be. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. How do you get through that, though, when it gets really difficult? How do you keep going with the writing?
So I have an unfinished novel that I intend to get back to, but lately, the past few years, I've done a lot more just memoir-type writing. And that has been very fulfilling. I think what keeps me going is really, and maybe this is lofty, but the hope that it helps people. It helps people find, because the whole sort of ethos of this podcast and of this new project I'm working on called the Feely Human Collective is about allowing people in as themselves and allowing others to kind of relate and to connect and grow through those connections, right? Like if I share my story, if I'm vulnerable, right, it allows someone in, right? It allows other people to kind of connect with my story, relate to certain experiences that I've had. And that is an opportunity for growth and hope and, all these things in themselves and their hearts, right? And that's what I think about when I'm doing my writing, type of writing nowadays is like, I want to make an impact on those terms.
Mm. I think you definitely do that with the podcast. It's been really interesting listening to some of your back episodes, and I think, like you say, you allowing yourself to be vulnerable really does allow other people to open up as well. And yeah, I hope we can all do more of that.
Indeed, yeah, indeed. Well, let's transition into empathy heroes. This is the part of the show where my guest and I will talk about someone in our lives who is very empathetic, someone we love. Could be a character from a book, could be a character from a film, or a quote we love from our favorite author, or someone we know in real life, of course. I will go first, Amy, to give you a moment to think about your empathy hero.
Okay.
My empathy hero this week is our chiropractor, and by our, I mean my wife and I, our chiropractor, Ray, who came to visit us yesterday, socially distanced, very in a safe social distance way, but he had been wanting to visit our house for a while, and we've known Ray for 10 plus years. And he's just a really sweet guy, and he's the type of guy that, always is asking questions about like what's going on in your life, and you feel very seen, right, and validated by him. But he also I mentioned before, I have this new mental health community launching. It's actually launching at the end of this month. So by the time this episode's out, you guys, Feely Human will be out. But part of that sort of new business is, I have some merch and stuff, and he bought a couple of shirts off of me, which was just very sweet and nice, and I just made me happy. So Dr. Ray is my empathy hero this week.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you?
We need a photo of him in his shirt.
Well, he got 2 shirts for his kids,
Oh, okay.
So I'll ask him to send those pictures of his kids.
I think for me, I'd like to mention another writer called Stella Duffy, who has been just amazing to me since I first met her when I must have been 22, 23. I'm 41 now. And she was the person, she and her wife were running a writing retreat that I went on, and they weren't just guest authors running the retreat. They were kind of fully embedded in that week that we were with them. They were amazing. And I got back from the retreat and my friend said, how was it? And I said, it sounds dramatic, but it was life-changing because of the confidence that they instilled in me, and I think in the others who were there at the time. And I stayed in touch with her. And when I first began writing again after I had my kids, I sent her a message because I'd been on another retreat and she'd come as a guest author there. And she said to me, it's all very well you doing these retreats, Amy, but what you really need to do, am I allowed to swear, by the way?
Of course.
Okay. She said, what you really need to do is stop going on these retreats and write the fucking book. And that just stuck with me. And then when I did begin writing again after having my children, I was doing this kind of online self-help thing, and it was saying it recommended that you make a promise to somebody that you were going to see through your goal, even if that person wasn't somebody who was in your life daily. Just make the promise to them, and then you feel responsible for seeing that goal through. And so I sent Stella an email and said, you don't have to respond to this. I'm just sending you this email to tell you that this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to write a novel, and I'm just letting you know, because I think if I tell you, I'll feel more obliged to see it through. I said, I just wish I'd had a time machine and I could go back and record you telling me to write the fucking book, and then I could play that to myself every day. And within about 2 hours, and she didn't know it was my birthday, but it was my birthday, she sent me a message back with a video of her telling me to write the fucking book so that I could play that to myself every day. And she has been such a brilliant inspiration to me throughout the whole of my writing career. And even though she's exceptionally busy and crazily active, she does all this social community stuff as well. She's now learning to be a yoga teacher as well as all her fantastic writing stuff. She's always there. And even if she doesn't know she's there, even if she's not doing something that is for me, I kind of always feel her presence, if that makes it doesn't that sound really cheesy. I just feel like she's there pushing me on all the time in a really positive way, not in an aggressive way, not in a you've got to do this, just in a you can do this way, I suppose. And so, yeah, I think for somebody like that who's so exceptionally busy, to find the time just to not just reply in a message, but actually record a video for me so that I can have that to hand whenever I need her is incredible. So, yeah, I'm forever grateful to her.
And what's her name again?
Her name is Stella Duffy.
Stella Duffy. Well, that's amazing. That's I love that so much. And you did it. You wrote the fucking book.
I did, and my mum had me so I'm now looking at my writing room wall where I have a little banner that has hashtag WTFB, which stands for Write the Fucking Book. And my mum had pencils engraved for me with WTFB on them. And my mum signs off every text with WTFB, or if I'm editing, it will be ETFB.
Wow.
And on my publication day, my mum sent me a text saying, publish the fucking book.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, Amy, so the book is out in the UK now. It's being published on July 14th in the US. Where can people connect with you, order the book, pre-order the book, all those things?
So it's available for pre-order it should be available from all independent bookshops, I'd imagine, in the US. It certainly is over in the UK. It is on Amazon, but if you can go indie, go indie. You can connect with me on Twitter and Instagram. On both of those, I am at Beashel Writes, so BeashelWrites. And yeah, you'll find me on there.
Excellent. Well, Amy, thank you so much for being on You Me Empathy, and thank you for writing this beautiful book. We need more Izzies in the world, and we need more Amys in the world, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. We also need more Nodes in the world, so thank you so much for having me on. It's been really lovely to speak with you.
Likewise, my friend. And to you listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's You Me Empathy.